It's my great pleasure to introduce to you today two guests to our room. One is Leanne. She's here. She's going to be helping her father, who is Rudy Stocek, and he is the expert in Eastern Canada for bald eagles. So we are super excited and very fortunate to have him join our classroom and share his knowledge with us today. So let's give him a great welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. How many of you have been on the St. John River out here? All of you?
All of them.
In the past, all right. Have you seen some large birds flying by that you perhaps couldn't identify? Some of these large birds out there are eagles. Now, if you go out along the river there, particularly during the summer, but any time during the year, you're likely to see one of these very large birds. One that has a white head and white tail. This happens to be a bald eagle. Not all bald eagles, however, have white heads and white tails. Yeah. You know, they're pretty big birds. See the wing feathers out there called primaries? Primary feathers, there's 10 on each wing. The birds oftentimes fly up and down the river because not only do they breed here, they also feed a lot from the river. It's hard to tell a male from a female when you're just looking at it up in the air.
The female is bigger than the male.
That's right, and that's the one point I was going to make up here as well. The female is about 25 to 30% larger than the male. Usually it's the other way around. Usually in most of the animal community, we expect the male to be not only showier, but also bigger than the female. The birds of prey, and the eagle is a bird of prey, one of a number we have in the province. The female tends to be the larger bird. Now this is one of the other types of eagles that you're going to see here. It's going to be the immature bald eagles. It takes bald eagles about 5 years to become adults. The 5th year, you'll look at birds and see what they look like before, but up to that point, they look a lot like a brown bird with some white interspersed throughout. This happens to be an immature bald eagle. And this is what they look like. Kind of a scrawny looking bird, isn't it? Not as pretty as the adult. You notice there's a lot of white in plumage here, and it can be found on the breast or the wings, depending on how old the bird is. These birds are probably 2 or 3 years old. 4th year, they start to get a white head and a white tail, and then the 5th year, they are fully adult. So you'll notice there's other differences here as well. The immature birds here are as big as the adults. Now, the immature bald eagles, or the juveniles, look like this. They have a brown head. Look at the color of the eye. Look at the color of the beak. Now that looks different than the adult, which would look like this. Did you notice the difference there? The color of the beak turns yellow, and the eye turns yellow as well. And this is a difference not only in the coloration of the feathers, but also in the coloration of the eyes and the beaks in the young birds. This is an example of a bald eagle that is survived one of the winters. This one is 2 or 3 years old, I was thinking. Survived one of the winters, and it looks kind of scraggly, because winter is a tough time for bald eagles up here. Very hard to get sufficient food for these. So they are oftentimes have to put a lot of effort in trying to get sufficient food for them. You'll notice the feathers here are kind of shattered a bit, and the bird is not one of a particularly good-looking bird, but it is a immature bird that's going through this growth process up till the 4th or 5th year. They nest primarily in white pines. They do have a preference for white pines, and you'll find a great number of nests in white pines, although if you look over a longer period of time, besides over 25 years, 19 trees, 19 species of trees have been used for nesting. Still, the white pine is favorite. It has a big branches, so it can hold a substantial sized nest. In this instance, there are a couple of bald eagles right in this nest here. You can see it's a substantial sized nest. Let's have a look. But in addition to the large trees that are necessary, whether they be white pine, they also have to be an adequate source of water. Any idea why these bald eagles are so keen on this water? Yes? You're right, exactly. That's where they get a lot of their food, from the water. So there has to be water fairly close by. And in fact, the nests that we have here in Treverton are relatively close to the river as well. So it's no problem for the birds to flip over and try to get a fish from the river. This is what the nest looks like. How many eggs do they bald eagles nest? Yes. Up to 3. All right. Including maybe 1 or 2, and they can also produce 3 eggs. Usually it takes them about, that's right, I'll leave it at that. Those eggs produce this one young or 2 young or 3 young. And it takes about 35 days for the eggs to hatch. 32 to 35 days. This is a 1-year-old eaglet. The young bird's called an eaglet. Okay. As it gets older in the nest, this one is about 4 weeks old, it produces has a different set of feathers. Notice the first one. We can't go back to the first. You notice the white or gray feathers that it had before? This one has a different color to it now. It's an older version. Yeah. And as he gets older, you're going to find in this very large nest, and that's on the Grand Land Island, these are 2 immatures, and here is a gull or cluster that the birds have been feeding on. Now what you'll find here is the feathers start to change color, and these darker feathers are the actually feathers that the bird uses for flying. Next slide. Well, those young ones, those are a couple of days old. They're 2. But look at the size of that nest. It's a great big nest. Once again, let's have that. Now, as the birds are getting older, notice the new feathers coming in the tail feathers. Notice the dark color. These are flight feathers. These are feathers that are coming. But these birds are not ready to fly yet. They haven't developed any wing feathers properly or the tail feathers. Put the next one up. However, these are more advanced in age and they can stand. Usually when the bald eaglets are small, they have to lay down in the nest for the most part. These, as they get older, they can stand up now, next to flying. These birds are not ready to fly. These are the adults or the immatures that are standing in the nest, and they'll be in the nest for approximately 12 weeks. Okay, now, these birds are ready to, pretty ready to fly. Can you imagine trying to band these things when you're climbing up the tree and you look over the edge of the nest and you see these things looking at you? And they are big birds.
Rudy, could you explain banding to the kids?
Banding, all right. Right here, see these yellow tags on the legs? Well, birds are oftentimes identified by putting tags on, in the case of eagles, on their legs. So what happens is we'll go up and we'll take some of the birds and sometimes take them out of the nest, put them in a bag, take them, put them on the ground, and then we'll put a band of some sort, some identifying band, such as the yellow, on their legs to identify. Now, what do the adults do while the young are in the nest? Well, if they're not out fishing, and a lot of times they're not, they use these trees for roosting, or roosting trees. Sit there to watch not only the nest and the young, but to watch everything else that's going on, what's happening, including where they might be able to get their next meal. Now, what happens in the winter? I said, very difficult getting food in the winter. Well, actually, when they try to get food, there is one bird that apparently sticks with them all the time. That is the crow. The crow said, whenever eagles are down getting food, there'll be crows around trying to find what's left of them as well. Now, what do the birds feed on in the winter, the adult birds? They feed on just about any animal matter around. Anything that's edible, they'll eat. Okay? That's speaking very general terms, but that's about it. Anything that's edible, animal matter, they'll feed, dead or alive. Sometimes we'll find that beautiful bird no longer stays there because we find that the birds have a great deal of mortality. This bird was shot. A lot of people shoot bald eagles. They've been shooting bald eagles more in the past than now. But that's the problem. We have any change in the habitat is a problem for the contaminants. Is a problem. I don't want to talk much about this, but anyway, contaminants and a few other things are very hazardous to these birds. And collisions. A lot of these birds will fly into power lines and things like this, and they oftentimes kill themselves because they have such a big wingspan. And particularly the young birds. They're not used to flying around so much. Yes. It is against the law, you're right there. Yeah, well, a lot of people had done it in the past. A lot of people had gotten prosecuted from it. Not as much as they should have in the province here. But there's a lot less of it now. Yes?
What happens when you shoot a ball in the
What happens?
to
You'd get arrested and you probably would be fined a great deal. If you do more than once, you're probably going to be jailed as well. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that, folks. I won't go any further. I should tell you, for instance, that the birds are, we expect them to live around hopefully about 20 years. But they don't usually make that. Although some of them have gotten as far as 40 years. But usually it's around 20 years they're resolved. Yes?
If a bald eagle found another bald eagle dead, what would he do?
He'd just leave it and go on. Wouldn't do anything.
Be happy that he's still alive.
In fact, depending on the age of the bird and how hungry he was, he might even try to eat in the winter. Yep.
Does a bald eagle have a nose? Yeah.
You're looking at it, it's a beak.
What did a dog eagle eat so amazing
Well, yes, it would, but on its own, but it might eat others. Yes. Okay, folks, that's it.
Boys and girls, what do we say to Rudy Stocek for coming and sharing his expertise?
Okay, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.